Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so sorry there's loud noise in the background, but we are going to take some time to let everybody just get in, and then I will do introductions and then we'll get started. So thank you for coming. Okay, once again, thank you for joining. I'm going to just give a little couple of minutes to let everybody in, but I will start with just introducing myself. So my name is Naftali Moore, and I am a staff attorney here on the School Justice Project at Advocates for Children of New York. Today, we will be discussing accessing behavioral health supports in schools. Before getting started, just some logistical notes. I'm going to wait to answer specific questions until the end of the presentation, but feel free to use the Q&A feature during the presentation as questions come up. We also do have another AFC staff member, Ross, who will be monitoring the Q&A and will either answer your questions directly or flag it for me to discuss at the end of the PowerPoint. And then also the presentation will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel so that if you have specific questions about your child's circumstances and you rather not share them in this recorded segment, we can leave a few minutes at the very end to start recording and answer those questions. And then after, you will also receive a copy of this PowerPoint when the presentation is completed. In addition, at the end, we do have a survey for everyone to fill out, so please fill it out at the end. And then I also do have to mention this, if you are here as a licensed social worker, we do offer continued education credit. And you will just need to email webinars at advocatesforchildren.org with your license information to get that credit. So while folks still are filtering in, you'll see that there is some polling questions, so that we can just get a better sense of who is here today. The questions have already been launched, but it's just asking about attendee information, demographic information, and some disabilities classification. So if you can just answer the poll, um, then we'll just finally get started. Oh, and I also do want to mention we do have our ASL interpreter Marley here, so that this can be accessible for everybody that is attending. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Thank you everybody for answering the poll questions. So today, again, we will be discussing how to access behavior health supports in schools. My goal today is to share some information about supports available to all students, for students with disabilities, tips and strategies when advocating for behavior supports, and some problem solving if you encounter any issues trying to get those supports. I know some folks have had questions that were a bit outside of our topic area, so if you are here today and have specific questions, please put it in the Q&A and we can try to answer it directly or point you to other resources. So just a brief overview of AFC. So we were founded in 1971 by parents and students with disability, and the mission has expanded quite a bit over the years. So AFC's projects, they include early childhood, charter schools. We work directly with youth that are in homeless or just in shelters, immigrant students with English learners, school justice, which is the project that I'm on, which involves suspensions, court-involved youth, school to prison pipeline, bullying. We also work with LGBTQ students. We also do work with students that need behavioral and mental health supports. Um, and then we also do work with overage and older students. So this is our helpline. If you guys need to reach out at any time for just advice or to see if you can work with us directly, You can call that number. It's available Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay, so we will be discussing the different definitions of social emotional behavior supports. And it is important to note that social emotional learning is the process through which all people require and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal or collective goals. Also to feel and show empathy for others and establish and maintain supportive relationships and make responsible for caring decisions. It is important to note again that schools are not just responsible for providing students with spaces for academic learning, but also for social emotional learning and development as well. Our emotional and social well-being obviously affects how we think, feel, and act, and helps determine how we handle stress related to others, to make healthy choices. So these are all necessary skills for life. So also necessary skills for school to be teaching children and our students so that they can learn. So again, why is this important? It is crucial because unmet social, emotional, and mental health needs can have an impact on learning. Our emotional and social well-being affects how we think, feel, and act, and helps determine how we handle stress related to others and make healthy choices. In particular, students with social, emotional, or mental health wellness it's correlated with an increase in grades, attendance, self-esteem, overall child health, and a decrease in absenteeism and emergency room use for mental health services. In addition, you may have been following in the news, as outlined in recent just Surgeon General's advice, there is a youth mental health crisis occurring across the U.S. So there, it is important to note that there is a increase in depression, anxiety, and thoughts of self-harm. Okay. I'm sorry, Ross, can you just go back to the last slide? Thank you. So before we do move any further, I just want to note that we are not trained clinicians at all. We primarily are attorneys and also advocates. So we do compile just a lot of information and resources and supports from trained clinicians that we do work with, so that we can be able to provide this information to families, to schools, and communities. Um, so this is just a slide of the different headlines and the current climate regarding mental health in students. Okay. So I want to talk about the impact on learning. So stress and trauma and unmet mental health and behavior needs negatively impact a student's chance of school success. When a child's housing or family or life is unstable, there are many stressors competing for that child's attention and energy. Those feelings can quickly become overwhelming, especially for a younger student. And all of the competition for energy and attention can make a student less available to learn. And when students are experiencing chronic stress and trauma, they are more at risk for failing academically, as well as exhibiting challenging behavior in schools, such as aggression or extreme withdrawal and dissociation. So when students are less available to learn, they're obviously more at risk for not succeeding in school. Okay, so I just want to talk about this slide. This is really parents' rights. One of the first things I have to note is that the school should not ask you to keep your child at home. They should not be asking you to repeatedly pick up your child from school early or ask you to remain in the classroom with your child because of their behavior. I say that knowing that that actually does happen. That is a lot of parents and caretakers' reality. But it is inappropriate for the school to call you every day to pick up your child from school or to tell you to find a new school. They are required to provide your child with support. The school should not exclude your child from after-school activities or field trips because of their behavior. The school should not hold over your child. A child should never be held back because of behavior challenges. A child can, however, be held back because they do not have the academic skills to do the work at the next grade level, but not because of behavior alone. The school should not repeatedly complain to you. I know this is something that a lot of parents are experiencing, but it is inappropriate for your school to repeatedly complain to you, whether in person, on the phone, or over email. Instead, your school must work with you to find solutions that will help address your child's behavior. The school should not repeatedly suspend your child. This is a really important one because I know families are experiencing this at an extreme rate. But if your child is being suspended or removed from class because of their behavior, speak to the school so that they can find an appropriate way to address your child's behaviors in class. I will also say, please look at the New York City Discipline Code, which contains information on supports and interventions schools must provide for the child. The discipline code explains the standards for behavior in New York City public schools. It describes supports, interventions, and disciplinary responses that schools can use when students are experiencing behavior challenges. And it also explains how you can appeal decisions you do not agree with. It can be extremely helpful to discuss these standards of behavior with your child at home as well. The school should notify you if they use physical or any type of restraint on your child, or if a student is placed in a timeout room. I want to emphasize the school should not request school safety agents or police assistance to manage your child's behavior or mental health issues, or discipline your child, even though the reality is that many schools are relying on these outside supports. The school should not call 911 on your child if they're having a behavioral or mental health challenges in school, unless it is a true emergency. The school should not refer a student to virtual learning because of their behavior in the classroom. Just thank you. So this slide really does talk about some of the school-based supports that I just mentioned in the previous slide. So the first one is at-risk counseling. This can be offered on a time-limited basis. I would say usually between 8 to 12 weeks for students struggling with specific circumstances. This is not something that it's mandated, so it does not go on the IEP or if your child has a 504 plan, but it's usually provided as needed. And it may be with a school social worker, guidance counselor, or psychologist. Then there's informal behavior interventions, which can be implemented by the teacher, the guidance counselor, the classroom para. It may be also for a limited time period. It could also look like something like a behavior contract or a behavior chart or a conduct card or attendance monitoring or a point and a reward system. It can even look like signaling to take a break and see the school counselor or a check-in at the beginning or the end of the school day. The next is crisis de-escalation plan, which is required under Chancellor's Regulations A-411. Each school must have a crisis de-escalation team that develops a plan each year that includes strategies for de-escalating behavior crises, identifies a location in the school building where students in crisis may be safely isolated from others, identifies any school staff trained in de-escalation techniques, or identifies in-school and community resources available to schools and parents, and lastly, describes how crisis de-escalation and response protocols are communicated to school staff. The next is something called school-based mental health services, also known as STH, community coordinators. So every school has some type of mental health supports for students. It could be anything from having access to mental health consultants to help train staff or provide assistance on individual cases, to having access to crisis intervention staff during emergencies, to having a mental health clinic on site at schools. And that is only in specific schools. So for a list of the different supports available by school, I would encourage you to go to the website that will be included on the next slide. And then the last one is the school-based mental health services. So some schools again do have this school-based mental health services. It's not available in every school, but it can be, you can see what schools have it, on the website that's on the next slide. Okay. So just to talk about some of the school-based mental health services, and I also want to just bring your attention to the list of programs that I was mentioning, where it shows what school has these programs. The website is linked below. It's schools.nyc.gov/school life, health, and wellness and mental health. But these are just various school-based mental health services at school. Every school should either have access to in-school support or have resources or connections to community-based providers. So there are school response clinicians, and these are licensed social workers who support students facing crises across the city to reduce the practice of the school calling 911 and also to reduce trips to the emergency department. So the central team of clinical social workers who are available to assist schools when responding to students in emotional distress, as well as provide professional learning citywide for social workers, school counselors, and crisis team. And the school response team is only available right now in 28 schools. So these teams do provide crisis support and interventions, including assessments of individual students and recommended services, train staff, and mental health referrals for families and students. I also do want to just bring your attention to something called the School Mental Health Prevention Intervention Program, also known as PIP. It's only available in 42 schools, but it does help schools access need for mental health services within their building, partner with community providers, set up school-based programs, offer crisis support and intervention trainings. There's also another unique program. It's called the Mental Health Continuum. It's only now in 50 schools, I believe in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. So this is where schools partner with child and adolescents outpatient mental health clinics through New York City Health and Hospitals. Students under 18 years old can get diagnostic evaluations, ongoing therapy, medication management, and other clinical services. Sessions can be done either at the clinic or via or through a telemental health video conference, and schools or parents can make a referral for the child who's learning in person or remotely. It is a fast track to mental health care, and assessments and appointments will be expedited at the clinic for an evaluation within 5 days of connecting the parent with the clinic after getting the referral. Again, that is a limited program and it's not in every school, so please check the website on this slide to see if that's something your school provides. So I do see that there was a question that popped up saying why are certain behavioral supports appropriate for the IEP? I believe I will address that in some upcoming slides. So if you can just give me a moment, I can fully flesh out that question. So again, I just want to show this slide on how to find supports on school websites. You would have to go to the DOE website and it lists the specific mental health supports in each school. So it's schoolsearch.schools.nyc. you would type in the name of the school or the address, and then you will have all the information after you click select. After you click search, I'm sorry. Again, this is just how it would look if you do go through the website. And then you can go down to where it says mental health and wellness tab, and it really lists out all the actual supports that they can provide in that specific school. This is just an example of what it would look like if you did do the search, and it lists out all the supports that they can provide in that school and also community supports that they also connect with. So as I mentioned in a previous slide, the New York City Discipline Code, so there's two versions. There's one for grades kindergarten through 5 and grades 6 through 12. And this is just the basis for all suspensions in New York City district schools. It is available on the DOE website and it is updated annually. So it just includes the DOE's mission statement on school climate, students' Bill of Rights and Responsibilities. And also, since September of 2019, it does include a greater focus on behavior interventions and supports. And if we were to go just more in depth into that code, I'm so sorry if we could just can go back. It does show on page like 13 of the code, you'll see information on progressive discipline as well as a glossary of positive behavioral supports and interventions. You'll also see information about restorative practices in schools that are expected to be used instead of just punitive punishments or use of police or emergency rooms. And if you are working with a student who's experiencing behavioral challenges, make sure that the school is using these techniques and not just resorting to suspension or classroom removals. It is required by the discipline code that if schools are not following these steps, please reach out and let us know, and we can put you in touch with the superintendent or the Office for Student Youth Development for support. Okay. So, like I said, there has been some updates to the code and approach to discipline. So the code's mission statement is made clear that the DOE is embracing progressive discipline, and progressive discipline seeks to correct students' behavior through counseling and other school-based interventions, such as restorative practices. The progressive discipline does not seek to punish or suspend. When a suspension or removal is warranted, the school should start with the disciplinary responses that keep students in their school and not jump to longer or maximum length of suspension. I would say it's very important to hold the DOE accountable to their own code and use language to your advantage when advocating for your student, for your clients, or for your child, right? And I would say it is important that these alternatives are mentioned because, again, we are seeing that students, particularly in foster care, are twice as likely to be suspended, and those suspended are 3 times more likely to drop out of school by the 10th grade. So, your advocacy for your child, for your student, for a client can truly make a difference. Okay. So, as I mentioned, restorative justice practices. Under the new discipline code, all New York City public elementary schools must provide social emotional learning to students, and all middle and high schools must implement restorative justice practices. This includes circles, peer mediation, community service, and is not just used to respond to an incident, Schools must implement regular community circles as a preventive measure so that students and the school's community are comfortable using a circle when disciplinary incidents do occur. I would say we push heavily for restorative justice here at AFC because it really can do a lot of positive change. It really does move it from discipline and what you may hear of consequences. Instead of consequences and blaming someone or a student, it's a restorative approach that asks as what has happened, who was harmed, what needs to be done to make things right, and how people behave differently in response to the incident. It does take into account that all members of the school community must be brought together, and must discuss abilities, interests, different viewpoints, and family and cultural backgrounds. Restorative practice can be used in conjunction with removal or suspension. And for example, a welcome back circle can be used after a teacher removal or suspension. The circle formally welcomes a returning student back into the school community. They are required for students returning from a superintendent suspension, and the returning student and other circle participants make commitments for a smooth transition to the school community. The circle can provide a safe space for participants to voice their opinions while actively listening to each other. The ultimate goal of restorative justice and even a circle is aimed to build a sense of community. So this slide on social emotional learning curriculum in school emphasizes just the strengthening partnerships with other superintendent offices, either school mental health consultant program or the school response teams. Also, just partnering with community-based and school-based mental health clinics. We do encourage everyone to push schools to really get involved with these different players and these different supports who may be available to support for your child or your student. So I will take the time now to pause and to answer some questions. I do want to go back to why aren't certain behavior supports appropriate for the IEP? Like I said, we do have some upcoming slides that really do talk more about what behavior supports can be added to an IEP, but there's also some informal supports that do not need to be added to an IEP or even a 504 plan, but that can still be implemented to the school. So I'm not sure exactly what specific supports you're referring to that are not appropriate to add to an IEP, but we do have a full slide that does talk about the different supports. Okay. So like I said, I am now going to switch gears and start talking about supports for students with disabilities. This is what I was referencing as the different behavioral supports that are appropriate to add either to an IEP or just to ask informally for the school to implement. Um, so thank you, Ross. So, I just want to go through the overview of just the special education process briefly. So, there are some pre-referral interventions to address behavioral and academic needs. It does start with a referral. You do need to provide your consent. Parents must either provide their consent either in writing or verbally, but I would say writing is much stronger because you will be able to build a paper trail. Then the once the school does get that consent to evaluate, they should do an evaluation, and then from the data from the evaluation, that's when they can develop an IEP. And the IEP can really inform what placement and services are more appropriate for your child or student. Okay, so this slide is really going to answer the question about behavior supports for students with IEPs. There's many different supports that can be implemented. So parents can advocate for their child to remain in school with additional supports. And here's just a list of those supports. Under the IDEA, I want to just really quote the law. A behavior that is showing up as a manifestation of a student's disability must be met with certain supports and services that can be incorporated in the IEP through something called an FBA, which is a functional behavior assessment, which we will discuss further in upcoming slides, or a behavior intervention plan, also known as a BIP. Behavioral paraprofessionals that can support a student inside the classroom and school setting, or staff training and supports. These supports can be implemented to prevent and address the behaviors without relying on very punitive or punishable measures. And we really cannot emphasize enough that behavior and social emotional supports is a part of learning. And for students with IEPs, part of what constitutes a free and appropriate public education are these behavioral supports. So behavior, again, that is a manifestation of a student's disability must be met with support, services, and not punishment. So specifically for IEPs, here are some specific things that you can ask for from the school in order to better support your child or student's needs. You can request something called assistive technology, sensory items, weighted vest, ask for paraprofessional support, ask for a behavior intervention plan. You can also ask the school to observe your student at different times of the day and offer to partner with the school by collecting some of this information on your own and then share the information and work together to discuss interventions and strategies to create a plan. You can bring in additional support from like a therapist or a counselor outside the school to work with the school as well. I do want to remind that, if you are going to work with your child's clinicianal team, and if they are receiving therapy or medication management outside of the school, or from another mental health provider, you can connect that therapist with the school to help figure out what types of interventions might work for students in the school setting. Um, I would say just again, many students have additional staff, like also psychotherapists, crisis intervention, or care coordinators who work on behavior strategies with the parent in the home. So think about getting creative here and ask whether those strategies that are taking place in the home can also be transferred into the school environment as well. Okay, so this slide, I really want to talk more about the behavioral functional behavior assessment. I'm sorry, FBA. So this is a special education assessment, um, and this is not something that you have to pay for. This is something that you can request from your child's school or the DOE. But Medicaid may also cover the cost if you do need to get an independent functional behavior assessment. If the DOE has already done an FBA evaluation, but you disagree with the findings, you can request again for the DOE to pay for this independent assessment. But to do this, you would need to send like a letter to the IEP team or your child's committee on special education, which is the CSE. And if the DOE does agree to pay for the independent assessment, you would just need to choose an evaluator and then ask for the reimbursement. But what a functional behavior assessment is, it's a collection of data to address what is the behavior that is showing up that is preventing your child or student from accessing their education. And then also, when does the behavior occur? How often does it occur? For how long? And then from the data that is collected from the FBA, you can meet with your IEP team and discuss whether other interventions are needed. So this next slide is just the data from the FBA. Once it is done, the team must use the FBA to create a BIP, which is the behavior intervention plan that will prevent and address the behavior and promote positive behavior. So the BIP must include information about when and how often the behavior happens and how severe it is, strategies for stopping the behavior from happening, which can include classroom changes, a new school schedule, a safety plan for how to manage the behavior when it does happen, such as calming the student down, removing the student from the classroom, or having the child speak with a trusted adult. It also must include a specific school staff member who your child trusts, who will be the designated person to work to support your child and will be available to safely work with your child when the behavior occurs. And that can be somebody like a school social worker, a guidance counselor, or a trusted staff member that your child or student trusts in. And then it also must include a schedule to mark progress and set a future meeting date so that you can remain up to date on how well the BIP is working and making changes if you feel, or make changes if you feel that it's needed. Um, so this slide is really just turning to other DOE programs that are available for students that may either have um, different behavioral challenges or may even be on the autism spectrum. One of those programs is the DOE's PATH pilot program. There's also other programs that you guys may know of as Horizon, NEST, and other options for students with disabilities, but that might need just specialized support. So the PATH program is for students who are at risk or have emotional disability classification on their IEP. It is for younger students and it provides intense behavioral and social emotional supports for them. The idea is that these students may be normally referred to a D75 setting, a District 75, in kindergarten or first grade, but are capable to remain in a District 1 through 32 school but just need additional behavioral supports. So currently, this program is limited and is only in a number of districts, and only in specific kindergarten classes. But the recommendation for this program will be made at a Turning 5 IEP meeting. So you can access this by asking about this at your child's Turning 5 IEP meeting or by emailing pathprogram@schools.nyc.gov for more information. So, as I mentioned, there's other programs within the DOE that can address other disabilities that your child or student is experiencing. So, one of them is the Autism Nest and Horizon, and they can be really great programs for students that just need extra social emotional supports within a District 1 through 32 school. And the staff do get specialized training on autism, and NEST serves students with autism who are or above grade level in a reduced size ICT class. So Horizon serves students in an 8 1-to-1 class who are at or near grade level. Again, I do want to emphasize that seats are limited and students must apply directly to these programs. The IEP team at their school cannot just recommend Horizon or Nest for a student. To apply, you must go to the webpage that is on this slide and click on the link for Nest and Horizon application. And then you must fill out the application. It's usually a 3-page form and it's pretty straightforward. The only thing I want to mention that the current evaluation must include an autism assessment or official autism diagnosis. And then the program will, look over the application and determine if there's additional testing that is needed. And then we'll work with the child's school and also CSC to arrange for the right testing if additional evaluations are required. I also do want to just mention this slide because in previous trainings, parents and participants have asked about programs for students with intellectual disabilities. So there are some different programs that can provide academic, career, and essential skills, and it's called the ACES program. So this is a special class within District 1 through 32 schools that teach academic, vocational, and independent living skills to students with mild to moderate intellectual disabilities. It's for students that have the classification of intellectual disability on their IEP. And you will also have to apply to this program directly, similar to Nest and Horizon. So the DOE has these programs nearly in almost every district, but certainly not in every school. So seats are limited. So please click on the link if you do want to apply and just complete the application. And then some staff member from ACES will reach out for more information. So this slide really does talk more about the programs for students that have the classification of emotional disabilities. So within a community school, which is a District 1 through 32 school, they usually provide general education or may even provide ICT classroom, which is an integrated co-teaching classroom. They may even provide a special class like a 12 one-to-one or 15 to 1. You may be provided with or without a BIP or FBA, or just be provided with a one-on-one behavior para. And they also do have this in a District 75 inclusion program, which is still connected to a community school. This is the least restrictive environment. In a more restrictive setting, um, you can see that your child may be placed in a District 75 with a 12 one-to-one or 12 one to or 8 one-to-one classroom, or even in a day treatment or day program or residential program. That is a more restrictive setting, and it does require the IEP team to put that on the IEP as a placement. So with this slide, I just want to kind of turn our wheels to talk more about tips and strategies. I'm assuming a lot of you guys are here today because you want tips and strategies. You're seeing that either your child or different students are facing a lot of challenges with behavior challenges and just need additional supports with just advocating with the school or staff members. So I do want to remind again that, we do work with different clinical teams. And if your child is receiving therapy or medication management at an agency or from other mental health providers outside of school, you can connect their therapist with the school to help figure out what types of interventions might work for the student within the school setting. Also, again, like I've mentioned, many youth have different staff members like social therapists or crisis intervention or care coordinators who work within the home. So I would say really if you can connect those providers that are assisting in the home with the school team to see whether those things can be implemented, it will be just something that can be an additional support. And then I do have to emphasize again, we are not clinicians, but we do receive some of these tips and strategies that are recommended to us by clinicians. And these strategies have worked with students who are in need of behavioral supports. So these are strategies you can request to be made a part of the FBA or the BIP or the IEP, or just ask directly to the teacher to just implement within the classroom or within the school setting without an IEP. So these are just some of our general behavior management tips. I would say it is important to make sure that there's clear and consistent and reasonable expectations that are set. It's also very important to provide the child with different choices. A lot of children are told what to do all the time and not provided choices on how to navigate certain difficulties. And then also, it's important to be flexible. Children get bored and do need different things to engage them. I would say also try to take the path of the least resistance and always be kind to yourself. This is something that is extremely important to remember because this is not an easy process for parents and different educators. I would also say to validate your child and yourself. Communicating your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors makes sense given you and your child are, going through certain circumstances. I do want to emphasize that validation does not mean agreement. It can be very helpful to acknowledge that you understand what your child is experiencing or feeling without agreeing completely with the school. So this slide talks more about behavior management tools that can be used either in the school or at home. And it can be incorporated in an IEP, or if your child does not have an IEP, you can try seeking behavior supports from your child's school. It can be included in something that I mentioned previously, like the informal behavior interventions or informal behavior plans. So schools have just different ways of implementing these informal behavior supports that just includes a conversation of, hey, can we use something like a visual daily schedule, or can we use cognitive breaks between tasks, or movement breaks, or can there be something implemented like a verbal and visual cues for directions to stay on task, or something like a behavior contract or behavior chart, which emphasizes like rewarding positive behaviors and appropriate behaviors, or the use of positive reinforcement, or even just connecting with the school to provide daily teacher feedback to the parents on how the child is doing. I would say, we know schools have different communication systems like Class Dojo to communicate with parents. So you can ask the school to set up a system that works best for you and works best with the school to provide daily updates on how your child is responding to some of these behavior interventions that are implemented. One thing that I did mention is just de-escalation. These are common strategies on how to really support a child or student who is just dysregulated. So I would say the first thing is to remain calm and try to stay calm, to provide choices to the child or student, to encourage the child to use coping strategies that are known to work, to just also encourage, just to show and encourage the child that you are listening, to also validate the child's thoughts and feelings. And when appropriate, I would say to try to lighten the mood, right? With some type of humor or just taking away from the seriousness of the circumstances. And then trying to find the time to debrief after the incident to identify ways to improve so the situation doesn't occur again. So the next few slides are just specific strategies that we have compiled throughout our work with clinicians for students that have different types of needs. So here are some strategies for students with language-based difficulties. There are some, you'll see some repetition between some of these strategies throughout the slides, but I just want to note that it can be applied and used for many different needs. So one of the things, like I mentioned previously, is like the use of a visual schedule, really just showing the student or the child what they need to do within the school day can also ease a lot of anxiety or just, tension of like what is going to happen next. The use of a timer or visual countdown system, the use of first then statements, offering choices in a visual format instead of verbally. And also the use of like certain apps. There's free apps where you can utilize to really show this visual timer and countdown that can also help the child or student. Again, this is just other slides that can be used for students that have attentional difficulties. So, some things that have been successful is like creating a simple list of instructions, using a lot of praise and positive reinforcement, creating a reward system, using consequences effectively. So I don't like the word consequences. I know it can be a little bit of a trigger word, but really addressing when a behavior may be inappropriate and really using appropriate responses to that behavior and really establishing structure as well. So these are strategies for children that may have a low frustration tolerance. So it has been successful in the past of like completing a task one at a time instead of just saying you have to complete this, this, and this. Beginning with less complex tasks with fewer components, returning to mastery or to a task that the child can successfully complete first, offering again choices. I can't stress that enough and providing scaffolding or encouragement and praise when the child is responding appropriately. So this is strategies for children that can be highly active. So the use of movement and motor breaks are key. It's something that can be implemented on IEP or not, just by saying, hey, a 5-minute break when the student or child requests. The use of a fidget toy or something small and silent that the child or student can hold in their hand, and really setting clear rules and expectations for behavior. I would say this is an area to get very creative. You can also incorporate videos from the internet, from different songs and movements that your child or student may like, or even look up the use of like yoga or dance or stretching videos that can be incorporated. So these are strategies for children that have anxiety. So the use of coping and calming strategies, either listening to music on headphones, deep breathing, or watching a preferred video clip. Also just promoting the use of active, positive coping strategies through modeling, co-participation and discussion, engaging in some type of physical or um, movement activity, right? To kind of get that energy out. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, but offering choices. A lot of students are told what to do and not provided choices on how to navigate certain difficult circumstances or challenges. And this can be really positive for a student that is experiencing like low self-esteem to have the choice where they can make to to get back to baseline, to get back to um, being regulated. So the next couple of slides are going to be more focused on problem solving, just different ways you can reach out to the DOE for additional support and also being able to advocate for your child to have these different behavior interventions and supports that I have mentioned previously. So this slide really just shows who to reach out first to. So I would say start with your child or student's school, right? Reach out to the parent coordinator, to the principal, to the school-based support team, right? That includes the psychologist that is going to be facilitating and leading your child or student's IEP meetings. I would also say to reach out, if that's not successful, to the superintendent's office, right? You can look up the different borough citywide offices, and those include behavior specialists, directors of student services, administrators of special education, and that will be your main point of contact. is just like going either to the school or just going directly to the superintendent's office. I would say, again, I just want to emphasize the key players that you should be reaching out to for behavior supports is the psychologists, the behavior specialists, and the crisis social workers. Next, I would say DOE Central, if really, things have escalated and you're still not seeing much changes within the schools or the superintendent office has not been able to address it, reach out to DOE Central on the Office of Special Education. And then you can just really just keep a list of contacts of everyone that you have spoken to, well as dates and conversations with the school staff. I would say please try to keep a paper trail through email, so or even just text messages. Ask for copies of the IEP. Also, just track the services your student or child is receiving. And that one is really important because if they're not receiving all their mandated services at the time that you do reach out to these different supports, or there's a delay in services, you might be entitled to something called compensatory services to make up for that lost time. So it is very important to keep a track of everything. And I would say just be persistent. Keep on reaching out, keep on asking for supports if your child or student is really struggling. And if all else fails, you can reach out to us at AFC. There are different situations where we can, come and support different families and students. And that's if like the school is not recommending any new behavior supports or is refusing to reopen evaluations or have evaluations conducted. If the school says that it cannot consider any changes to the IEP, or the school is refusing, again, to reopen evaluations so that can be included into the IEP, or if your child is removed from class, suspended from schools, or otherwise just disciplined. So I will take the time now to answer any questions and to also look at the chat if there's anything that has been. Okay, so I don't see any questions that were added. Um, so at this time, we will launch our final poll. Please fill out the exit survey. Again, if you need any additional information or supports in terms of behavior supports for your child or student, please reach out to our helpline. It is a toll-free number. And again, we're available Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can also email us at info@advocatesforchildren.org. And once we finish, wait, I just seen a question. One second. So the question says, what happens when you make the suggestion and you're told this is a community school? So I'm assuming your child is in a community school placement and you reached out for additional supports and you're receiving from school staff that, hey, we don't have those additional supports because this is a community school. I do want to mention, not in every circumstance, but sometimes schools may just be inappropriate, right? It may not be the right setting for your child or student. And at that point, you may have to look into a different school placement that can really truly meet the needs of your child or student. It is a case by case basis, right? So I would say if this is something that you may need additional support on, please reach out to our helpline to see whether we can, help you with looking at different schools. But if you do want to keep your child or student within that community school, but the school is not willing to provide additional supports, I would say really go back to those contacts, that slide where it lists the superintendent's office, the DOE district office, start making calls, right? Start trying to escalate it to see whether pressure from DOE leadership you know, will cause the school to make additional changes. I believe we're done. Oh, I do have another question. Okay, so do you have any information for special schools in Long Island? I don't have recommendations for school in Long Island. AFC really does work within the five boroughs. We do have, you know, connections to non-public schools in Long Island, but again, that requires um that placement to be either on your IEP or be that placement for to be appropriate for your student or your child. I would say that is a question that you can reach out to the helpline to see if whether we can assist you on exploring schools outside of the five boroughs. And I see that my colleague did put in the chat. I recommend reaching out to Long Island Advocacy Center, and I would say yes.